Hello and welcome to Leisure World, Inside Leisure World. Today I have two wonderful guests. I have George Henning and Irene Sestaro. George and Irene are involved with the Lane Victory. But George, I would like to get a little history on you first. What part of the country were you born?
Well, Bonnie, I was born in Trinidad, Colorado, and shortly thereafter moved over across the border into Raton, New Mexico. And we moved further on south and graduated from high school in Santa Fe.
And what kind of work did you do after high school?
After I graduated from high school, I went to New Mexico Aggies, but it was during the war, and I was there for almost 3 months when I saw a publication of a Merchant Marine cadet in his blues taking a sun sight. And rather than march around and play war games in the mountains in woolen khakis, I thought that blue serge was a much nicer way to go. So I joined the Merchant Marine Cadet Corps.
And what was that like, being a Merchant Marine? Did you travel a lot?
Yes, we had, first of all, from Santa Fe, we went to the west coast to San Mateo, where the basic school was, and spent 3 months in there learning to be a sailor. Subsequently, when we finished there, we were assigned to a ship and went to sea this was 1942. And I was assigned to the Liberty ship, the SS John Morton, and we sailed alone from San Francisco to New Zealand after stopping off in Guadalcanal and delivering supplies. After we had finished that, we moved over to, that was in Auckland. We moved to Wellington and discharged more, and then went across the Pacific to Antofagasta, Chile, where we picked up a load of copper and took that from Chile up through the Panama Canal into Guantanamo Bay. And the next day we formed up in a convoy and were taken to New York, where they discharged the cargo.
You've had quite an experience.
That was, yes, that was very interesting from my first trip.
And then how long were you involved in this?
Well, as soon as we arrived in New York, the district director came down and took me from the John Morton and put me on another ship when we were going to the United Kingdom. Nobody was supposed to know where you're going, but they had crates labeled UK, so it wasn't too much of a secret. And we went alone from New York to Halifax, where we joined a convoy and were escorted from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Liverpool. It was in the wintertime. The North Atlantic in the winter is not a nice place to be. It's cold, the waves are huge, and there's not too much daylight. So we were constantly aware of the possibility of submarines or German aircraft at the time, and unfortunately one of the ships was torpedoed, but it wasn't mine, so I was very happy about that and quite glad to arrive in Liverpool in one piece.
Wow. Now, before we get back to the Lane Victory, did you travel any more after that through the Merchant Marine?
No. From there we went back to New York, and I was taken from a ship and sent to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point in Long Island. I was there for 9 months studying out on the technicality of being an engineer. You had a choice. You could either be an engineer or a deckman. And I decided I wanted to be an engineer. After coming across the North Atlantic in the winter, I wanted to be where it was warmer. So we were there for 9 months, and upon graduation you had your third assistant engineer's license or your third mate's license, and also a reserve commission in the Navy. I went in the Navy because at the time there was a quaint saying going around that you would be assigned either to the Navy or the Merchant Marine at the convenience of the government. And I guess the convenience of the government included me at that time. So I went to destroyer school in New England, and was assigned to a destroyer, and lo and behold, we were escorting another convoy across England on my first trip. We arrived, we took them across. This time everything was great, and we had no losses. And from Liverpool we returned with another convoy to New York, and then we were dismissed from escort duty and sent through the Panama Canal to the Pacific, where we joined up with the fleet in their various exercises throughout the remainder of the war.
My goodness. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching right now that are sitting there and saying, I really wish I can talk to this man in person because I can relate to what he's talking about. It was my father, my uncle had the same experience, but I never got to talk to him. So hopefully when our video is over, we'll have some information where someone can contact you, and perhaps you can share some stories with them.
Well, I'd be delighted to talk to anyone.
That'd be great. So now we're going to move on to the Lane Victory. Tell me a little about the Lane Victory. Where is it located? And then, Irene, I want to find out what you're all about and how you're involved in the Lane Victory. But George, let me start with you.
Well, presently the Lane Victory is moored at berth 46 in San Pedro, California. And we will be there. That's our permanent berth for the moment. We've been moved several times while being in San Pedro, as they're redeveloping that end of town, and we move if they move us around if we're in a way, because they don't want us to be involved with the developing of the area. Would you like to know how we obtained the Lane Victory?
Yes, I would, very much so. I definitely want some history on that.
After the World War II was over, there were a group of mariners who decided that they would like to have a ship of their own. The American Merchant Marine delivered all of the 99% of the supplies to any battlefront in the world during the war. Many people, excuse me, many people think it was the Navy that brought all the supplies, but that's not the case. The Navy had other things to do. So the Merchant Marine would bring supplies and oil and so forth to the various fronts, discharge their cargo, and then return for another load. The Merchant Marine suffered heavy casualties, percentage-wise more than the Marine Corps. I think there were some 644 merchant ships lost, which would total up to around over 6,400 merchant mariners who are now lying deep in the ocean. Excuse me. But these these mariners were meeting in the post office in Long Beach. There were Clint Johnson, Joe Vernick, John Smith, and Abe Rappaport. They were thinking, gee, it would be very nice if we could have a ship of our own to see if we couldn't make it viable again and ride around and take people out to Catalina and so forth. So they talked with Congressman Glenn Anderson at the time from San Pedro. Excuse me, and it was decided that Clint and his wife Pat would go to Washington to talk with the Maritime Commission. And as it happened, they became acquainted with Helen Delrich Bentley, who was a representative from Maryland. She was on the Maritime Commission committee and was extremely interested in the Merchant Marine and was quite a fighter. Clint personally made three more trips back to Washington, D.C., where he became quite involved with the Congressman Anderson and Bentley, and between the three of them, they pestered Congress, and so they finally decided to give us a ship. They said, you can go to the reserve fleet in Suisun Bay, look around and pick the best ship that you can find. Well, they came back very happy about that, and were soon on their way to Suisun Bay. And after investigating all of the ships there, they selected the SS Lane Victory. SS Lane Victory stands for steamship. The Lane Victory is named after Isaac Lane, who was a Negro professor or president of Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee. We have had some of his relatives come to our Christmas parties and have become well acquainted with the Lane College in Tennessee. After we had the ship, you have to understand it was laid up for 17 years, so the exterior showed the signs of wear and tear, and it was what you really call a rust bucket.
I have a question, though. Who brought the ship down?
Excuse me.
Who brought the ship down to?
The Navy had a tug going from San Francisco to San Pedro, and so they volunteered, the Navy offered it to us to tow the ship from Suisun Bay to San Pedro.
Were you on the ship?
Pardon me?
Were you on the ship?
No, no one was allowed to come down on the ship.
Okay.
It was still a dead ship, so that no one were allowed to ride. The tug dropped us off in San Pedro Bay. Unbeknownst to the Harbor Department of San Pedro, they were quite surprised when they dropped the anchor and said, "What is this?" Well, they did not want us there, and they had no reason to accept us. So, fortunately, a former classmate of mine from Kings Point was president of a coal company, and they had coal piers in San Pedro, and he said, "Come alongside us at our coal piers, and we'll take care of you." So we prevailed on some tugs to bring us over to the coal piers, where we tied up and became a permanent fixture for a period of time. You understand, this was a dead ship. We had no power, no water, no sewage, no nothing. So it was we had to prevail on anyone down there who could help us, which very fortunately many people came forth, and
that's wonderful.
The coal pier provided electricity and water and sewage for us. So once we were connected, and that way we were in business. Now we have to repair the ship and get it back into seagoing status.
Well, now I have another question here. So that was in what year?
That was in 1988.
So moving forward a couple of years, you were able to get the ship into a good status?
Yes, we managed to get the ship ship shape in order to go to sea. So,
what was it like to go to sea?
It was thrilling. We decided that we would take passengers to Catalina, and we would not stop at Catalina because we did not want to interfere with the taxi business from Long Beach and San Pedro to Catalina. So, but we would, as we steamed by Avalon, we would blow our whistle, and the harbor master would reply with his. And
what year was that?
This was approximately 1993, and our cruise would commence at. We would get underway at 9 o'clock in the morning. They would serve a continental breakfast because we allow boarders to commence at 7. They were continental type breakfast, and then after we got underway at 9 o'clock, we would clear the breakwater and drop off the pilot. And after going out a few more miles, we would have our memorial services for one or two ships that had been lost during the war, and we were honoring the casualties of that war with both the merchant sailors and the Naval Armed Guard.
One more second here. Irene, you've been on the ship when they've done the memorial service.
Yes.
How did it make you feel? What was that experience for you?
I always feel really excited to know that we are having these merchant seamen and Navy seamen honored. And I was told that all the wave caps represent a seaman that has lost their lives, and then I get to help with Pat Johnson, and we do the carnations, and we toss them overboard. We hand them to the cadet, and the cadet rings a bell with the name of the person, and throw the carnation overboard for each
That's pretty
seaman.
exciting. I mean, that must make you feel very special.
Very special, yeah.
So now that we've taken everyone out to sea, we're bringing them back. You've done that a number of times? You've had the crews go out?
Oh, yes, but allow me to get back to San Pedro.
Yes, please.
After we would leave San Pedro, we would have a catered lunch from Auntie's restaurant in San Pedro, and then the air show would commence. There was a Condor squadron from Van Nuys that flew AT-6 World War II type training planes, and they would have U.S. markings on them, and there's several would have German markings. So they would rendezvous with us, and the air show began. The German planes would attack the ship in simulating attack. Our armed guard, the Navy gunners, would simulate firing at them with 20 millimeters, and our 5-inch 38 was rigged so that it would make a loud bang when they shot it. And this continued until two more U.S. planes arrived, and they would dogfight, and each time two of the Germans made smoke. And that was, we've won every battle so far. But after it was over, all six planes would form up and fly over the ship in formation on their way back to Van Nuys. It was a very very thrilling event to watch. On each time they saw it, I don't think anyone was ever disappointed, and all the crew always wanted to see the battle again, because it was very interesting. With these pilots were probably as old as we were. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it was interesting to see how they were in such good condition. They could fly these planes with such great skill.
Irene, it looks to me like you remember it.
Oh, I remember my first time that I came aboard. It was in 1992, and I had my video camera, and I remember the planes flying over, and my camera was like a gun. And when I was videoing the shooting and everything, it was heartbreaking to. It's just like you were there, you know, that in the battle, and that was my first experience aboard.
What I like is that you being on the, I'll call the management end, and then Irene is more on the, good question, Bonnie, you just lost it. But Irene is more on working with the people that come onto the ship, and your feelings. You're working more with your feelings.
I do the anchor light for the ship. Mm-hmm. Each month I put together the labels, and this is how I get to know the members and who they are, and I like to research the history of the ship, and I love wandering around the ship. That's one of my most exciting, is on the cruises. I get to be like a Roman up and down the ladders, and
was it your family member that was involved in the ship?
My dad, yeah, he was one of the members that brought the ship down, that helped bring down. My mom worked in the gift shop, and that's when she always put me to work, coming to visit. I used to come out from Arizona, and she would hand me the hats, and she'd say, "Those people up there," because I'd get seasick in the museum when it's rocking back and forth, and so I'd go up on top and hand out hats. So get your hats. And
I like hearing the different contrast. You're bringing it from how it's making you feel, and you're bringing it from this is what we need to do to make this work.
Yes.
I love the two contrasts. So, George, now we're at about, well, let's say we're at 2014. I know there's a lot we didn't get to, but we're at 2014. And last weekend was a big event. Can you share that?
Last weekend was the Tall Ship Festival in San Pedro Harbor. And the supposedly very tall full-rigged sailing ships from both local and some come from Japan, Korea, or Chile. They sail up and participate in it, but unfortunately, they didn't make the trip. They were a week late. They came in this week rather than last week, and so they did the best they could with the vessels that were available in the area, and they had a nice parade. It was about 250,000 people participated in the event in the San Pedro area. They moored the Lane Victory astern of the USS Iowa. So we're right there in the middle of the parade with everyone else, and the parade, the most attraction in the parade was a huge rubber duck. It was approximately 60 feet high, and it was put on a barge and towed at the head of the parade by a small tug that had a great deal of trouble maneuvering because the tug was overmatched. If you don't mind, I would like to get back to the ship
Certainly.
for a moment. To finish up the cruise, we would then come into San Pedro Harbor, where the fire department would put on a fantastic water show with their display of water in the area for about 15 minutes. But in order to make this happen, each crew member had to be certified by the Coast Guard. All the officers had to have current licenses, and all of the crew had to be certified in their particular rate. You understand, we're taking 600 or 700 passengers aboard, and we're somewhat like a mini passenger ship, and we must meet those standards, which are extremely strict. We worked under the cognizance of the Coast Guard, and which was very, very good, because they made sure that everything was in a very safe condition, which was our prime concern. We didn't want to have any accidents or any problems that we couldn't do, that would be of any problem to the passengers. So the Coast Guard is our boss, and if they tell us something where there's no argument, we would just say, "Aye, aye, sir," and away we go. But and that system has worked very well for the past since about 1993. They're very good at their job, and we try to be very good at our job, and the two meet and makes a very nice working companionship.
Irene, let's see. Tell me more about your experience this past week.
Okay, well, in 2007 is when I was introduced to the ship through members of Leisure World, John Patton, and Clint Johnson, and they brought it was like once or twice a week that we would go to the ship, and I'd work in the office and into the library. That's where I'm a history buff, and I really enjoy the history of the Lane Victory. And when we were doing the cruises, we were doing back to back. I mean, we'd go out on a Saturday and back in that day, and then the next day we'd go out, and it was like I would be in housekeeping, and I'd help keep the what they call them heads, the restrooms. I'd make sure that it had paper towels and
Important job.
And very important. The first thing people ask is, "Where's the restroom?" So, and then after we came in, I'd clean up pick up what's the trash and things, but I really enjoyed going into the galley and having lunch with all the engineer and the crew members and even the women aboard was their positions in like the gift shop And so, but in 2014, this year, having the ship towed from our berth 49 to, what was it, 91, where the cruise ships are?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 91.
Yeah, 91, yeah. And so that was fun, just being docked and just watching the people coming aboard. I mean, at one time it was like wall-to-wall people during this festival that we had.
That's very exciting. So this means a lot to both of you. Is there a way that we can help as a group? Do you know offhand the phone number that we can call, or we can look it up, I think, under, what is it, SS Lane Victory. We can look it up under SS Lane Victory, and if someone wants to help, they can definitely get in touch with them, with you, or with them.
Well, I can give you the office phone number. It's
Sure.
310-519-9545. The office manager, Scott Strike, will answer the phone, and if he isn't there, it will be put on a recording. If he isn't there, please leave your message, because we'd be very anxious to talk with you. You have to understand that the Lane Victory is crewed and operated and maintained strictly by volunteers. The only paid person we have is a bookkeeper, and we would appreciate anyone who wants to, and welcome anyone who wants to come down, regardless of your talent. We'll find a place for you to we can put you to work right away, and we're glad to have you. So please don't hesitate if you have any interest at all.
What's that phone number again?
319-519-9545.
And the gentleman's name?
The office manager is Scott Strike.
And perhaps they'll say they saw you on Inside Leisure World.
Well, that would be nice. I hope so.
And before we close, do you have any other information you'd like to share?
Yes, the Lane Victory is a training platform for the harbor police, the police from various areas, Homeland Security, Fire Department. We have narcotic sniffing dogs are trained there, and then we have a Sea Cadet program on our cruises. They perform much hard labor, but also they're instructed in seamanship, engineering, or whatever their specialties are.
I'm going to have to hold you on that one, and I thank you both so much for joining us. Again, if you're interested, please contact the Lane Victory. They're out of San Pedro. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie. We certainly appreciate you.